Hey guys, I thought I'd do a video on all the different things I learned about standing wheelchairs and how you can incorporate standing into your everyday life if you're a paraplegic. So first I wanted to talk about medical benefits of standing. This is important not just to help motivate you to look into this and seriously consider getting a standing wheelchair, but also if you are purchasing a standing wheelchair, sometimes you may need to have a letter of medical necessity to help with the purchase, in which case I have two great resources for that. Here's a paper I recommend reading. I have a link to it in the description that goes over the benefits of standing wheelchairs specifically. Has a nice bullet list of benefits as well as references that you could look up for specific studies. There's also a website for a company called EasyStand. EasyStand manufactures standing frames. These are slightly different from standing wheelchairs as they are fixed standing frames that you can only stand in, but they are very beneficial because you are standing, and these guys have a pretty extensive list of benefits and references. Each one of these has 3 links to studies and papers. As far as the ones that are probably the most important, at least in my mind, maintaining bone density obviously is important. You are going to develop osteoporosis if you don't stand. You actually start developing it almost immediately when you stop standing and putting weight on your feet. Standing is a more natural position than sitting, since the chair was not invented when we first started walking. But the other benefits are improved bowel function. So you're going to if you have issues with constipation, standing will help with that. You get an improved range of motion. If you sit all day, every day, your hip flexors and your hamstrings will start getting tighter and tighter, and it will become more and more difficult to straighten your leg. If you could stand for at least an hour or maybe a few hours a day, you will be able to stretch out those muscles. It's a big reason why they have standing desks in a lot of companies. You can also improve just your cardiovascular strength in general. This is important as since you live now a more sedentary life, standing up actually forces your heart to work a little bit harder. So cardiovascular strength is something that you definitely want to maintain for long-term health. You can help manage pressure ulcers. So if you develop a pressure ulcer on your buttocks, sitting in the wheelchair will probably agitate it. If you were to sit in a wheelchair for 8 to 10 hours a day, you're obviously not going to be able to let that pressure ulcer heal. If you are able to stand instead, you can then de-weight your buttocks and hopefully get off of bed rest much, much quicker. It also will promote upper body strength or trunk strength. When you sit, it's easy to just kind of slouch a little bit and kind of lean on your backrest when you're standing. It forces your trunk to tighten up a little bit, and you might be able to maintain a little bit more strength there. One thing I should also mention that it has helped me personally, because I do have a standing frame by EasyStand in my living room right now, is sometimes I have noticed throughout the day I will get pain at my injury level. I think it might be related to gas because I tend to get this pain after lunch and after dinner. And I have noticed in some days it gets to the point where I have to lay down or do something about it. And standing actually does relieve it. So instead of having to go to my bedroom to lay down, I could just get in my standing frame, stand up, and the pain tends to go away. I don't know if this is something that's common, but I have definitely used the standing frame for that purpose. So you could go through all these links. Again, I will have a link to both the EasyStand website as well as the paper I mentioned in the description of the video. And check it out. There are really quite a lot of benefits to standing. So there are 2 types of mechanisms I have found in fully manual standing wheelchairs. There are automatic standing wheelchairs that I'm not going to go over in this video. One of them uses your armrests, just as this guy is demonstrating right here. You can push up and actually lock the wheelchair out in any position in between standing and sitting. I initially thought this would be a benefit, but it turns out that at least at my injury level, I tend to slide down so much that any position other than
really sitting down or near sitting down and standing is not really reasonable for me. So that's not really a benefit I would have been able to leverage. The other mechanism uses these two levers, and actually it's one swift motion. Both the standing company and the Permobil Levo USA wheelchair use this mechanism. I don't know who has the patent. I know the standing company's been out for at least 20 years, so patent might be expired by now. But this chair I liked a lot because it's a very swift motion. As you could see, he just stands up in one quick motion. So those are kind of the two different mechanisms for standing. I think the first one I showed is a little bit simpler, and for that reason, the chairs are slightly less expensive, or in this case, a lot less expensive. The video I actually showed is from this Wheelchair 88 website. I know very little about them. There's no reviews out there. They're based in Malaysia, I think. They don't really have any support in the US. They do respond to English emails, though, so you can email them. They have two different seat widths, 16-inch and 18-inch. I assume the rest is adjustable. I think it is going to be difficult, though, because the gas struts in particular, which are used to help you stand up, are definitely weight dependent. So I don't know how you're going to get support for that. But if you don't have any money and you can't find a used wheelchair, this might be a good option. There's a reseller in the United States called Karman Healthcare. They seem to be selling the same chair. This chair looks identical to the Wheelchair 88 chair. It even has the same color scheme. I'm just assuming that you might get a little bit more support with these guys, although when I talked to them, they didn't or were not able to answer my questions. So I don't know how reliable these guys are either. I was not able to get a demo of these guys in the Bay Area. So I can't say much about those chairs. The standing company seems like one of the pioneers in this industry. I think the founder, I saw a YouTube video of him, designed the chair for a friend of his or something like that. Seemed like a nice enough guy. Only issue is this was like 30 years ago or something like that. So, or 20 years ago, maybe 25. And the wheelchair doesn't seem like it has evolved much since. These guys also didn't have sales reps in California, so it was difficult for me to get a demo. And they're primarily based on the East Coast. So if you're on the East Coast, I would check out the standing company. And if you can get a demo, definitely ping me and let me know how it goes. Due to the lack of the ability to get a demo of this chair, and it kind of looking a little bit outdated, I didn't feel like this was the best option. The best two options were by a company called Levo USA and another one called Permobil. I was actually able to demo both of these chairs. I had National Seating Mobility come to my house with both chairs, and I was able to check them both out. It wasn't necessarily an apples-to-apples comparison because the Levo was a much older chair. I think it was already 7 years old, and the Permobil chair was pretty new. That said, I have to say that the Permobil chair was significantly better on many levels. It was lighter. It wasn't as clunky. It looked like it was designed as a premium product. Actually, I've been looking at various videos of their chairs. This was actually a chair that was designed by a standalone company that was also focused on standing wheelchairs that Permobil bought. I don't know when. It was in the late 2000s. But they've definitely evolved the chair. It has, from at least a visual perspective, seems to have improved. The Levo chair was also not tuned to my body, so when I was getting up in it, it was difficult to push up because the gas struts were not the right pressure, which is another reason why I'd be worried about the previous to the Karman and the Wheelchair 88 chair. If the gas strut is not tuned to your weight, it's going to be very difficult to stand up in it. These chairs have gas struts that compress as you sit down and make it much, much, much easier to stand up. In fact, if it's properly tuned, you almost just stand up naturally because it pushes up on you. So the Helium LSA chair was great. I could stand up in it very easily. And I was able to actually demo it twice, not only in my house, but also in the hospital. In both places, I was able to stand up with it with relative ease. When we tested it in the house, it had even higher pressure gas struts, which made it even easier to stand up. I was able to stand up really quickly and then sit back down. You also gain a little bit of elevation before you lock it in the sitting position. So you do gain a few inches, which in my case, I could see as being useful in terms of being able to see over kitchen counters and maybe into your kitchen pots a little bit. The chair itself, I have to admit, is bigger and heavier than my regular wheelchair, which for my case, for instance, would be a deal breaker as a primary chair because I'm not able to get into my bathroom or maneuver in the kitchen as well. I have a pretty tight kitchen. So I actually imagine that this is going to be a chair that I use only and primarily at work. Um, at work, I have adjustable standing desk, which is perfect for this chair because I could just sit, do an hour of work, then push a button on my desk, and then push on these levers and be in a standing position and continue working without too much of a break. And I imagine I'll be able to get, multiple hours of standing every day, and from that, all the medical benefits that I talked about.